The desire to settle a score, to get one's revenge for past wrongdoings, can drive a person to do almost anything. It can even dictate how one lives their life, staying with them for days, months, or even years. For one young man from southwestern Japan, it was 12 long years. 12 years before he set out on his path. This is the true story of the Saga class reunion incident. First of all, thank you for coming to my channel. I make videos about stories from Japan. If you like what you see here, please consider subscribing. I have many videos that cover all kinds of events, so I'm sure you will find something interesting. In any case, let's get into the video. Yoshiharu Akashi was born sometime in 1964 in Saga Prefecture on Kyushu, a somewhat rural area of the main southwest island of Japan. He was the only son of two junior high school teachers, an English teacher father and a music teacher mother. Since they were both respected teachers, it is said that his upbringing was a little strict and that his parents had high hopes for him. All in all, a pretty average Japanese family. Yoshiharu entered into a local elementary school but had trouble fitting in with other students, something he was teased for. His parents, worried about the situation, moved him to another school outside the local district in his third year. Fortunately, things were a little better for him there. He graduated from the new school and then naturally moved on to study at a junior high school. It was here, however, where things sadly and unjustly took a turn for the worst. Yoshiharu was a quiet boy of small stature, which unfortunately made him a target for terrible bullies. According to one of his classmates from junior high, as we can read, he unfortunately endured some pretty horrendous experiences that must have affected him very badly. And according to another classmate from his elementary school days, Yoshiharu stood up for himself when he became a target, but it was because of this that he was treated even worse. Whether he kept quiet or spoke back at the bullies, he couldn't win. He spoke with his parents and teachers many times, as one should rightly do in such a predicament, but it seems that they were of little use to him. Teachers often turned a blind eye to what was happening. In fact, they and his parents actually turned the blame onto Yoshiharu, telling him that it was he who was also bad, and that he must solve the issue by standing up for himself or not antagonizing people. Yoshiharu's father, as previously mentioned, was a teacher himself. Not just any teacher, but a teacher at the very school that Yoshiharu attended. Therefore, he seemed quite keen to avoid any issues between his son and the school, so tried to brush things under the rug. To Yoshiharu, it seemed that his father was trying to protect his position and the school, rather than his own son, further pushing Yoshiharu into sadness. It seemed like he had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, but despite his unwarranted circumstances, he worked as best he could and graduated from junior high. From there, Yoshiharu entered into an agricultural high school, where he studied chemistry, a rather difficult subject. He didn't do this because he was interested in the field, however. No, this was the first step to achieve the one thing he had on his mind: vengeance. Little is known about his high school days, but he graduated after 2 years of study and entered into a technical college, where he studied about microbes and other scientific subjects to enrich his knowledge. Around the time he entered into college at 18 years old, he began writing his thoughts about himself, the world, and his future down in a diary, some of which is a little dark. I hope to cross paths with the fools who tormented me. This is my biggest dream in life. It is the only reason I live. He kept writing this diary, even after he graduated from college, documenting his desire to get even, as well as other things. When Yoshiharu was 20 years old in 1984, his father suddenly passed away from cirrhosis brought on by hepatitis B. Yoshiharu discovered that he too had this ailment, which came at a great shock and pushed him further into darkness. It was another thing that made him believe that he'd been dealt a bad hand in life. After completing his education, he worked in 3 different chemical companies, writing about a few of them. After graduating, I worked in a Fukuoka food production company. When I left, I began work in a Saitama company. These companies all deal with chemical reagents. Yes, to achieve my life's goal, I chose college and I chose these companies. It was all to obtain large quantities of chemicals. Since Yoshiharu worked at such specialist companies, he was given a license that enabled him to gain access to chemicals that ordinary people could not. But acquiring such things was not the only objective. There was something else that was on Yoshiharu's mind: how to get all his former classmates into one place at one time. To do so, he racked his brain for a while until an idea finally came to mind: a class reunion. In August 1990, Yoshiharu sent questionnaires to all his former classmates and teachers via mail, asking them questions such as when and where would be the easiest place for everyone to gather. When someone didn't reply, Yoshiharu was persistent, sending letters to them by express mail and even calling them up by telephone. In the end, he was able to get all his former classmates and teachers to agree to meet during the New Year's holiday on January 2nd, 1991, and sent formal invites. Yoshiharu even troubled himself by booking a place to hold the class reunion. According to his diary, he chose a particular venue because it was easy to bring in food and drinks. He was able to fund this using large amounts of money he had received after being involved in an unfortunate motorcycle accident, as written in his diary. He had his chemical knowledge, and from December 1990, he had the compounds prepared and the class reunion organized. Now, regrettably, he was able to set things in motion. On the 28th of December 1990, 5 days before the class reunion, Yoshiharu returned to his hometown of Saga in a minivan. He stayed together with his mother in the family home, but also booked a room at the Japanese inn where the class reunion would take place for convenience. The 2nd of January 1991, the day of the class reunion. At 5 p.m. that day, 40 former students and 5 teachers made their way to the Japanese inn. They gathered together, speaking fondly of past times while eating and drinking. It was a very fun day, and for all those participating, it was great to catch up with old friends after 12 long years. But there was something missing from the reunion. The organizer, Yoshiharu Akashi. Some members had heard that he was unable to attend due to a sudden work matter that required his attention. Since he had gone to the trouble of organizing such a fun night for everyone, people were saddened that he didn't show up in the end. As the hours went by, the event came to an end. Everything finished without incident. The night was, according to the attendees, a rousing success, and everything ended on a high note. But on the next day, they were in for a shock. On January 3rd, 1991, the local newspaper of this quiet area had quite the story. So, what happened? What did Yoshiharu do? To find out, let's go back to the day he returned to the family home. On that day, he drove his minivan, as previously mentioned. This minivan wasn't empty though. It was filled with various items. He brought many bags into the family home and was acting very differently from usual, which aroused the suspicion of his 53-year-old mother. She also noticed a strange odor coming from Yoshiharu's room. Fearing that something odd was going on, she decided to investigate. When Yoshiharu wasn't present, she went into his room and opened his bag. There, she found a diary entry entitled, "The time to carry out my plan has come," as well as some large gasoline cans. After reading it and knowing what horrible actions her son intended to do, at exactly 1 a.m. on the 1st of January 1991, New Year's Day, she decided to call an investigator who she was friends with and report her findings. The investigator quickly went to the inn where Yoshiharu booked a room and checked inside. He found 21 bottles of Eastern European beer. This specific beer was rare in Japan, but this was the exact reason Yoshiharu chose it. He wanted to disguise its appearance and taste, because in each bottle there was an extra ingredient that he had added: arsenic. Things would have ended very badly if the former classmates had drunk these. Authorities rightly confiscated these bottles and expanded their investigation. They searched Yoshiharu's minivan, where they found something else they did not expect. Inside a wooden box, they found a timer hooked up to 3 gasoline tanks, but they arrived at possibly the worst moment. As they investigated the vehicle, the timer ended and the tanks blew up, unfortunately injuring 3 innocent people investigating at the scene. It is said that the timing of this device was set to go off at the exact moment when the class reunion was in full swing. Despite these terrible things prepared by Yoshiharu for his former classmates and teachers, the class reunion, as we know, went ahead as planned. Since the police didn't want to spoil the fun of the guests who had gone to the trouble of meeting, they spent the whole day and night checking the venue building to make sure it was 100% safe for them. And to not put a damper on the mood, they decided not to tell any of the guests what had happened the previous day. At this point, some of you may be wondering what happened to Yoshiharu. Well, on the day of the class reunion, he was apprehended and sent for a psychiatric examination. Doctors, however, judged him to have legal competency, so he was formally arrested on the 22nd of January 1991. It took 1 year and 1 day to successfully hand down a sentence, and the Saga District Court settled on a 6-year jail term on the 23rd of January 1992. His crimes were preparing to commit homicide and for violating explosive laws. I think this is quite a light sentence for such things, considering the potential outcome. I wonder what would have happened if the bottles and device had been placed in the party venue. It is easy to sympathize with Yoshiharu. After all, he had endured quite a horrible experience in his youth, and both teachers and his own parents failed to help him. You could say that these experiences caused a psychological change in him that compelled him to do such things. However, we must remember that not everyone at the class reunion was responsible for Yoshiharu's past. In fact, many of the guests were shocked that he would do such a thing, and outright stated that they didn't know he had been bullied. Some even considered themselves to be on friendly terms with him. And let us not forget that 3 people completely unrelated to this suffered actual harm as a direct result of Yoshiharu's actions when the device in the car went off. In the end, what Yoshiharu did was very wrong, and he deserves to be punished for it. After his release in 1998, nothing is known about him, so I think it's safe to say he is living a normal life somewhere, and has hopefully let go of his past memories. I hope he is healed from them, and doesn't think about doing such things ever again. Thank you for watching my 20-second YouTube video. If you liked it, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and subscribe if you wish to see more videos like this. I wonder what could have happened if Yoshiharu's mother hadn't noticed the strange behavior of her son. If she wasn't so perceptive, maybe things could have been very bad in the end. I am glad at least that no one passed away, and that Yoshiharu was caught. I know the desire to settle a score must be very strong, but to live your life dedicated to it is probably not the healthiest thing to do. Anyway, That's enough from me. Until next time, goodbye.